Hey guys, welcome back to Gingerbread Aquatics with Andrew. Today we're going to be talking about how to choose a fish tank or how to choose an aquarium, or what is the best aquarium for your home. And the short of it is you just want to get the biggest tank that you can. That's the end of the video right there. See you guys. Just kidding. But that's really what it comes down to, is you want to try to get the largest tank that you can for a multitude of different reasons. But just one of the ones that I can think off the top of my head is dealing with, say, fish waste. Fish, when they are living, they're creating waste just like we do, and since they're living in the water, they need to have some way to deal with all that buildup of particularly ammonia and then to nitrite and then to nitrate. In a 5-gallon tank, the same amount of nitrate could be toxic to a fish, whereas that same amount of nitrate in a 50-gallon tank really wouldn't be that bad for the fish, all because of the dilution factor. You're diluting all of that ammonia, that same amount of ammonia, over a larger quantity of water, so you don't have the same issues that you would have in that 5-gallon tank. Hence why the short of it, a larger tank is going to be a better option, particularly for when you're starting out. At the end of the video, I'm going to share my personal recommendation for a starting tank and what tank I would keep if I could only keep one tank. What tank would you guys keep if you guys could only keep one tank for the rest of your life? Let me know in the comments below, and tell me why you guys would like to keep that, so that people that come upon this video can see what you would do in that situation and why you would choose that particular tank. The larger the tank you can afford gives you more leeway in mistakes that you will make as you are keeping your fish. So that is why I say the short of it is just get the largest aquarium that you can. But we also have to be responsible fish keepers, and that means that we have to properly budget our tanks, our fish, our equipment, our supplies, all of that. And just going out and buying the biggest aquarium that you can isn't necessarily the best thing for your budget, and you have to be practical about it. So budget is one aspect, knowing how much you can spend on a fish tank and how much money you have left over to buy for the fish, for the heaters, for the filters, for the air pump, for the gravel, for the rock, for the plants, for the light, for the dechlorinator, for the food. All of that is important outside of the fish tank. The fish tank is what you need to have the fish to actually keep them, but you also need all these other things that you have to consider when buying a tank. The budget is one thing. One other thing to help with budget is by buying a used aquarium. I wouldn't recommend buying a used aquarium if you're buying your first aquarium, but that is a very good way to save money as people are getting out of the hobby or transitioning to different size tanks, or to larger tanks or to smaller tanks. They're going to want to sell them and they're going to want money for it. And then in that situation, you can end up getting a tank that might cost you $100 in the store for, say, $40, like I did. That was brand new, just by going online. But you also want to make sure that you know what you're looking for. You don't want to end up with a tank that has a broken seam or a hairline fracture or a broken rim and end up being out even more money because you don't know what to look for in a tank. So if you want to go down that route, I would suggest inviting or asking along another fellow fish keeper that has a lot of tanks and knows what to look for in a tank along with you when you're purchasing tanks, or just go on the safe side and just buy a new tank. The next consideration to think about is how large of a space you have to put your tank. You might have the budget for a 220-gallon tank, but you live in a 400 square foot apartment, and I don't really think you'd want that large of a tank in your tiny little apartment. Either it would have to be your dining room table, it have to be your kitchen countertop, or something, because you're not going to have a lot of space. For instance, my tank here is a 30-gallon cube, 27 gallons actually, but it fits very well into this little nook and corner here that I have between my bookshelf and the wall there. So it worked out very well for me because of the space that I had. Knowing the dimensions that you have to fit that tank into can also help you choose the best aquarium. So when you get home, you don't come to the realization that the tank you bought doesn't fit the space that you have, even though you thought it did. So make sure you measure that space that you want to put the aquarium in, and sometimes that might dictate that you have a longer tank that's a little skinnier, or you might have a fatter tank that's a little bit deeper, depending on where you're putting it in your house or home. The other important factor to consider is what type of fish you're going to be keeping. You don't want to keep a arowana or a red-tailed catfish in my 30-gallon tank here, because eventually I'll grow it and you'll have to get rid of it. And I would say that if you don't have the means to support that fish at its capacity, at its maximum size when you buy it, you shouldn't think about purchasing it. Even if it's a really cool fish or whatnot, you should buy fish for the size tank that you can afford at that time. Some people might disagree with that, but I think that is the best thing to do in order to be a responsible fish keeper. So if you are looking at buying, say, rainbow fish, which are very pretty, very pretty fish, you're going to want a longer tank so that they have more swimming room. Whereas if you have what I have, like Celestial Pearl Danios, that are very tiny fish that like sticking towards the bottom, you're going to want a tank that has a very wide and deep footprint so that they have a lot of space to roam around and swim around in. And having a long tank wouldn't necessarily do much for them. Also, another thing to consider in terms of tanks is that if you're looking at keeping a planted tank, for instance, having a shallower tank, one tank that doesn't have as much height on it and that has more depth to it, you're going to be able to create a better aquascape. And you're going to be able to create a better tank for your viewing pleasure and for your entertainment. So I would also consider whether or not you're going to be doing a fish-only tank, if you're going to be doing a planted tank, if you're going to be doing a reef tank, if you're going to be doing a saltwater tank of fish only. Like, it really does dictate what type of tank you want to look at into getting. For me, I like tanks that have more depth and have more width rather than something that is very skinny and very long. So I'm going to want something that has more of a dimensions like this cube here, maybe a little bit longer, but I don't want something like a 55 gallon that's really tall, because that height doesn't do me any good, because it's going to inhibit my light getting down to my plants in my tank. So I wouldn't want to consider something that has a really tall dimensions. I want something that's shallower and wider and deeper so that I can create a better aquascape. Another thing to consider is maintenance and how you're going to maintain it. If you have a really tall tank and are a really tiny person, getting down there to siphon out the water with your vacuum cleaner and to gravel vac is going to be very difficult. And it's something to consider how you're going to actually clean and maintain the tank. Because if you have a tank that is very difficult or cumbersome to maintain, you're not going to want to maintain it, and your tank's going to decrease in quality, and the fish are probably going to suffer for it. So make sure you have a tank that you can actually maintain. And I really would say that between a 10-gallon tank and like a 40-50 gallon tank, the only thing that's really going to change is the time that it takes to do your water changes and the time that it takes to, say, clean the algae off the glass. Besides that, keeping fish and feeding it and other day-to-day things, nothing really changes except you get more tank space for more fish. So for me personally, I think if I had to choose one tank that I had to keep for the rest of my life and I could only have that size tank, I think I would go with a 40-gallon breeder, because it's 36 inches by 17 by 18. So it's relatively long. It has a good depth to it, and it's relatively shallow compared to, say, like a 55-gallon tank that is 4 feet by 20-something inches, I think, and is very shallow, like maybe 12 inches only. So I wouldn't want a tank like that. I think I would like that 40-gallon tank because that is a really good footprint for me to be able to create a very nice aquascape, or to scape the tank in a way that creates a good balance throughout the entire tank and looks visually appealing, as well as being shallow enough that lights aren't going to be an issue in terms of lighting up the plants and providing them with the light that they need for photosynthesis. I also think the 40-gallon breeder is really nice because while finding a stand in the store might be difficult, I also like the 40-gallon breeder because while it's an unusual size, it's not an odd size. You can still find stands for, or you can buy stands like the one I did here, or you can build your own stand. So there's a lot of options for you when it comes to a 40-gallon breeder, in my opinion. One last thing, if you guys got any value out of this video, or if you liked it, make sure to like it and share with your friends, and consider subscribing to my channel for weekly aquarium videos. Thank you guys, have a blessed day.